Hey everyone, welcome to the School of Reinvention podcast. I am your host, Roger Osorio. I'm a reinvention coach and author of the book, The Journey to Reinvention, How to Build a Life Aligned with Your Values, Passions, and Purpose. I am incredibly excited for today's in-studio interview with Drew DeLeon, who is the co-founder and chief community officer of the Digilog. The Digilog is a diverse global music and tech community that programs educational conversations, career resources, and artist discovery content. Community-driven since 2016, and we're going to talk all about this journey to bring this thing to life. He and I met back in 2016 when he was actually just getting this off the ground. And it started off with a meetup. The story is 16 or 17 people that showed up. Exactly. And now you're hosting multi-day events. People flying in, sponsors, all this crazy stuff. So first of all, congratulations
Thank you
on the growth. And thank you so much for taking some time to be here with us and sharing with us your story of bringing something so cool to life.
First of all, it's a full circle moment because of where we were. We're in different pathways back in 2016. But I always like to say, and we mentioned this before this podcast interview, you really gave me the confidence when talking about the Digilog, because at the time it was at its infancy. I didn't necessarily know what it was, but when you talked about the opportunity to speak at that Techstars event, I had no resume to say like I could speak on these things, but I knew I was confident enough to, and it allowed me to build relationships with folks like Jordan, from the panel.
Oh, that's so cool that you stayed in touch with
who actually spoke at one of my panels afterwards, and we're still connected to this day, but I just always want to give you your flowers for giving me that confidence.
No, dude, I appreciate hearing that. And the event that Drew is talking about is called the Startup Weekend, and this was a music tech edition. So aspiring entrepreneurs, existing entrepreneurs all came together to pitch ideas for music technology. And then they spent the entire weekend learning and actually building their idea into a fully launchable concept that they could pitch to a panel of judges. And Drew was one of those judges. You were just incredible because, again, it's the success of that event comes down to that final event where we bring in so many diverse people who bring in really different questions. I mean, I obviously, as the facilitator of an event like that, I'm at drilling these entrepreneurs with questions throughout the whole weekend. Right. But at some point, it's the same questions all the time. And it's so cool when, folks like you come in and just ask them completely different questions. And with you, it was like a double win, because not only were you a creator, you were working with music labels, but you were deep in the industry. You cared about the tech and all of that. And so it added a lot of value, man. So no, we loved having you. I'm so glad. And it's so cool to know that involvement at that point in your journey was just so critical, for building confidence. So yeah, man, I'm really glad that, our team and I could help you with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted just to state that, kick it off that way.
I love it, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, today what I want to talk about with you is really, this is like our catch-up session. I mean, It's been a minute since we've talked, and so much has happened with the Digilog and, what you've done with that community. And the reason why I think this is so important for this particular podcast and for this audience is because I think as people look to reinvent their lives, reinvent their careers, or whatever it might be, what I have found from interviewing many on this show and also my own journey is the importance of people in all of that. And of course, whenever you can build that community as a part of your reinvention, I mean, man, forget about it. It takes it to a whole nother level. And that's what I'm trying to do right now. So honestly, I'm here as a student as well, and I'm trying to learn from you because we finally have clarity over what the School of Reinvention is and can be. And one part of that is a community. And so I feel I'm Drew 2016 right now. And so I want to learn from Drew 2023, who's already done so many incredible things, approaching 8 years with this. And I think that listeners who might also feel like, you know what, I want to build a community too, or I've thought about it, or I've tried it and it didn't work out.
Right.
Well, we can learn from you, man.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. I'm humbled to be here.
So let's kick it off. Take it back to 2016. Set the scene for us so we know where your mind was, where your spirit was, where your confidence was, anything that you think is relevant. And then, let's start talking.
Yeah, I think even before 2016, I just want to create some context, just so the viewers and the listeners can really understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
So more context about me. I'm first gen Filipino American. Grew up in Queens. So for a lot of first gen or just immigrant, children, the expectations to study hard, get that quote unquote corporate job are pretty high.
Yeah.
So the idea of creating opportunities within the creative field or pursuing creative endeavors are always kind of just looked down upon or just not necessarily supported. So I went to Baruch College for Business and I studied marketing because I didn't want to necessarily focus on finance or accounting because, I just wasn't passionate about it. But I was always a creative, when I was young.
Yeah.
And I think for me, being passionate about English and art, I always just would daydream about things. And I figured out, how do I tap into these things I think about at school and make that something that I can focus on? And I think marketing was like the best place to start. But, once I graduated, there wasn't a lot of marketing opportunities. So I found myself working at a finance job, at an investment bank. And, I thought I was doing the right thing, making my parents proud. Yeah. Because I worked for a prestigious bank, but the expectations and the pressure were high. I moved downtown in Battery Park. I thought I was deemed successful, in my eyes, in my parents' eyes, because they thought this was like, you're breaking the barrier, you're doing the right things, you're working in finance, you're living this really cool apartment in downtown Manhattan, and you're setting yourself up for success. But the reality is, I felt empty. Yeah. And, from 2006 to 2009, I kind of just like went with the punches of just working there and dreaded every Monday going in. And it was an important moment for me to be self-aware about it because the year leading into my pivot, I was thinking about various things to like pursue, and music wasn't necessarily a thought, but I was around music folks and creative people. Yeah. And I was serendipitously connected to a friend who was a DJ, and he was looking for someone to support him and kind of get him out in the marketplace. And he knew I had business acumen. I didn't necessarily know what I was doing, but my entry point, and just for context, to music was being a music manager. And that was my entry point around 2010 when I pivoted from finance to music. Okay. Fast forward to 2016, I'm, running a creative agency where like I'm helping supporting artists, really position their brands online. I'm supporting labels to navigate the social media landscape. Yeah. And I'm also working out of a co-working space called Wix, where I was able to see other entrepreneurs start their businesses, but also create events and meetups around their focuses, right? Yeah. So there was a fashion meetup. There was something focused on art. And then in my eyes, I was like, where is the music community? And how do I get the music community in this space? I reached out to the Wix admin team and I was like, hey, let's put together a meetup. And that was our first meetup. I didn't necessarily know what it was going to be, but I think the genesis of the Digilogue, which really stands for digital dialogue, was really a conversation to have with the music and tech community. Yeah. Right? You have the creative community, but you also have these architects and builders to be in a space where they can talk to each other. Yeah. And that was really the thesis around me starting it, with me and my co-founder Mevis at the time, and that was the genesis of it.
That space, I actually remember. Is it on 23rd Street?
23rd Street.
Yeah, I totally remember. I worked out of there a few times, actually. Yeah. We were probably in the same room at the same time before we knew each other.
Probably. And I really thank companies like that to be forward thinkers, understanding the importance of like communal spaces. Yes. Where, you have entrepreneurs that can't necessarily afford offices, but a desk and being in a space where, I found my co-founder, I found my first lead designer, built a lot of relationships with people outside of the music space. Yeah. And those spaces, I think, are still very important. Those spaces need to still exist. Yeah. I think for creatives, and hopefully there's a brand that can really foster that, because, I like to say, Wix allowed me to like start the Digilogue, because of that space.
That's awesome. I mean, and I hear you. I mean, I agree with what you said about those types of spaces, and it's crazy. We're talking, and it's only been a week now since the bankruptcy, or a week and a half since the bankruptcy of WeWork. And I don't think WeWork is a failure in the idea. I think it's a failure in the execution of trying to scale so quickly, which is something we're going to talk about. Yeah. Like when you try to scale too quickly before you're really ready. And I think they were just not ready to scale that magic. What you just described happened for you inside of the Wix space, which is really no different than a WeWork space. You're sitting around working with cool people who are doing interesting things, getting to know them, and then magic happens. I love what you said about also how you got into music. You mentioned people, that you were, serendipitously connected to a couple of people in that world, the DJ and others. And that's an important theme that, I think we're going to talk about when we get to community specifically for your members, because one of the things that I find talking to people about reinvention is just the absolute critical role of people. Whatever the role is. I mean, they play so many roles, but when you get into a community, that's the fastest way to get caught up in a new space that you're not a part of. So if you've never been in music, hang out with music folks and watch. If you do that for a year, how quickly you're caught up and you're like, okay, I know what's going on here. I've got ideas now. I want to bring something to life. And, you fast forwarded us to 2016 when you had that idea and you were ready to like bring something to life with your co-founder.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I think even my entry point back in 2009 was daunting. Yeah. I come from a set schedule, a finance background for 3 years. And then I really have to like switch the way I think, be entrepreneurial, and no one teaches you how to do that.
Yeah.
And then also find a starting point where in my mind, I'm just like going through just experiences. I'm learning, I don't say failure, just like being ambitious and just kind of navigating the space without any guidance.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why it also inspired me to start the Digilog, because I had community members and artists and just asked about, how do I do this? How do I do that? And in my mind, I was like, how do I not just help one person, but how do I help multiple people?
Yes.
And at once. And that was really one of the inspirations too, because I knew how challenging it was for me to navigate. But how can I help folks that are just starting in or feel lost?
That's a powerful question right there. And that's one that I want to make note of. How can I make sure that when I answer some of these questions for one person, I can also at the same time answer for many, right? How do I scale my answers so that I'm not just helping that one person?
Right.
And I feel like that's a powerful driving question for building any community, because that is, I would imagine, one of the greatest value propositions that you can bring to life is, hey, I could just have a one-on-one with you over coffee, or I could have a one-on-many in a meetup. Right. And when I answer this question in a panel, and now it's not just you hearing in the answer, but there's like 40 other people in this room tonight hearing that same answer. And for all we know, 20 of them needed that answer as well. And now you didn't have to sit down for 20 coffees.
Yeah, no, 100%. I didn't necessarily see that vision. I'm just seeing the inbound, and I'm like, we need to like be more efficient about this.
Yeah.
But the impact of it is that compounds, and then that intentionality also you start to see convert into impact.
Yeah.
Now it's a group as opposed to just one, and when you impact a group, that just compounds through word of mouth. So
you mentioned that there's this period when you left finance and then all of a sudden you're starting to work your way into music. And then fast forward, 6 years or so, and then, the Digilog is starting to come to life. But let's talk a little bit about those 6 years, because I think that there's probably something interesting there that helped you get to the point where you could have such an inspiration. Yeah. And this is so important for listeners, because as they're thinking about their own journey to reinvention, one of the things that I want listeners to take away is that reinvention takes time, and it's not something that happens overnight. There are many ways to get to a goal. There's a journey, literally. And in this case, there's like a 6-year period. Let's talk a little bit about that before we get into the founding of the Digilog and the inspiration and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started, like I said, my music journey, my entry point was a music manager, but I couldn't necessarily position my brand as just Drew DeLeon, because for someone that had no experience, these venues, the booking agents wouldn't take me seriously. Yeah. So I started the company Blank Label, which eventually became the management company, managing DJs and artists. And I booked, them from a management standpoint, and started managing them for a couple of years. But I also saw an opportunity to kind of expand on that and support DJs and artists, just how to navigate in the digital landscape. Just because you have new tools at the time. It was like Twitter was brand new. Yeah. Facebook was about 5 years old, and Instagram wasn't even out yet.
That's right.
So I think at the time, MySpace was at the tail end of like where it was. So it's just how to navigate this space. And, we're creating EPKs, all these things that were important to.
What's an EPK?
I'm sorry, electronic press kit.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, for the audience. So like being able to like create these little, I say, descriptions about who the artists and DJs are.
Yeah.
Where now we can find all that information online.
Yeah.
You know, so that was important for me. But also, you know, I had to be really frank with myself. You know, how do I monetize and make money? So this wasn't sustainable outside of just me trying to like build this out. So I had to get a full-time job. You know, I wanted to still stay in the music space and figure out a way to do that. My friend at the time, you know, sent me an opportunity to work with Beats by Dre as a brand ambassador. So that was really like the opportunity. It was supposed to be a 3-month role where they were opening up a pop-up shop. And for context for the audience, Beats by Dre was probably the most popular headphone at the time.
Yeah.
You know, you have Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine who collaborated. Dr. Dre is obviously a famous producer, artist, decided to kind of like brand these headphones and commercialize it as like the new it. You know, when we think of trendy sneakers like Jordans, the Jordans of headphones, to say the least. And it was interesting to really kind of watch that because, you know, as I was part of it for that 3 months, which eventually extended to 3 years, how they approached positioning this product within artists, content, music videos, commercials, the intersection of music, sports, fashion. And it really just taught me how like the power of branding and how music is at the centerpiece, but you have this product that kind of is an intersection of like sports as well. And it was really cool to see that. By working there as a brand ambassador, I eventually became one of the senior folks on the team. I was able to meet so many people and really positioned my discount with headphones to either get more opportunities from our artists, get access to events, really leverage that, and also position my blank label management company as like a talking point. I leveraged, hey, I work at Beats during the day, but I also have this management company where I represent artists. I love to like attend this event. I love to like get an article written about this artist. And I would take, you know, at a steep discount, you know, 75%. And I would just send, you know, I would invest in these headphones that were steeply discounted and send a pair. Like, hey, and it's like, hey, can I get some support from some love from our artists? And I leveraged that for a good 3 years. And it was nice because, you know, it was the hot thing at the time. And obviously that kind of ended as a, you know, they decided to sell Beats to Apple. And I knew at that point that was an inflection point for me where like I did enough, I've learned enough, and I decided to pursue Blank Label full time. At that time, around 2014, has evolved, right? It's not just a management company anymore. You know, I'm helping artists, so I kind of converted it into like more of a music agency, creative agency, where I would support artists with rollouts, campaigns, how to navigate the digital space. And eventually picked up more, I'd say, label clients. I started working with various labels, back to Wix. It allowed me to work in a space where I, at the time, was only like a sole entrepreneur. So I couldn't obviously work at the office, but working at a space like Wix allowed me to invite clients, allowed me to have a space to go into the city and like have meetings and legitimize what I was doing. Because, you know, I wanted to make it bigger than what it was, but the reality is it was just me. You know,
I want to talk a little bit about your time at Beats, because I love what you said about how you leveraged that opportunity to make more connections, to promote your other work. And this is important because I could imagine someone who decides, I want to get into the music world. And then they think to themselves, but I don't know anybody. And so, maybe this isn't for me. You, with this story, are showing us that there is always another way into the world. There is always another way. I mean, you went in as a brand ambassador. You didn't know at that point in time you were going to be there for 3 years. You thought it was going to be 3 months. But you gave it a shot anyway. You took a chance, and they took a chance on you, somebody in finance who was coming out of that finance world. And all of a sudden, you turned 3 months into 3 years. But not only did you turn 3 months into 3 years, you also helped bring your Blank Label Records to life through that. I think that's so important for listeners who are thinking about reinvention, because the thing about reinvention that I always talk about is how, first of all, no two reinventions are ever alike, because even if you and I at the same point in time in 2009 or 10 decided that we wanted to make this pivot into music, we were coming at it from very different experiences, skills, backgrounds, whatever. And our backgrounds are actually not that different. I was probably growing up in the same kind of way you grew up as a first gen and all that, just on this side of the river, like on this side of the other river. And, you know, so it wasn't, but even still, we'd approach it differently because we were just different people. Because of that, there's no book that would tell you how to go and move from finance, you know, Baruch, then finance, then, you know, prestigious banks into music. There's no book for that. No. And so that's what I think is so important about stories like yours, because you are sharing with us that, look, it's not go get a job with Beats and that's your secret to get into the music industry. No, it's like, hey, I found a 3-month opportunity. I went after it and I squeezed every last drop of juice out of it until I felt that there was no more juice to squeeze out of this thing. And then you decided, you know, 3 years later to move on when the Apple acquisition and all of that happened, and you felt that this wasn't right for you anymore. Can you tell us about walking away from that? Because I feel like that, I feel like there's probably a story there about like walking away. Like, I don't think you just woke up one day and said, all right, Beats, I'm out.
No, I mean, to be transparent, I think it came to a point where, you know, my relationship with leadership wasn't great. And I felt like at the time, you know, I was undermining the way that I wanted to lead the team. Yeah, I just felt like the environment and culture wasn't where it was 3 years prior. To me, I think that's important to note when working or collaborating or doing something. There is an expiration date sometimes. Yeah. And that pivot, you know, it's sometimes like you want to stick with it, but do I want to stick with this next journey? But it was more so like, I need to prioritize myself. I didn't feel inspired to work there anymore. And it was a daunting task because you take the financial aspect of it, this, you know, your salary, whatever you're making, and now you have to like think entrepreneurially again about how to generate revenue, and it was a daunting task. So like, you know, when that changed, like I had to like work some various odd jobs in between, you know, just so I could just like make ends meet. And I think that's a story that people don't share. Like I was refereeing volleyball games, softball games. I was just doing, you know, just making extra cash. Yeah,
I hear that, man. I parked cars. I folded shirts at a mall. You know, all with degrees, you know, but hey, like whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. And, you know, obviously I had to move back, you know, and live with my parents.
Oh my gosh, dude, or did we live the same life? Yeah. I also moved back with my parents.
So, and they, you know, thanked my mom for welcoming me back. Yeah. You know, it was a humbling experience. I think those things, and in my heart, I knew I was in the right place given, you know, what the optics could be perceived to be. Yeah. Because, you know, people are like, wait, this guy was working at this bank. Now he's working for this headphone company, but now he doesn't want to work there anymore. And, you know, people are worried, like, you know, how are you going to pay for your bills? And at that time, I was also in a relationship. You know, I was dating someone, you know, who had moved from a different country to live with me. And, you know, it was a pretty tough time because, you know, I go from making money and now I can't support her the way I can. And, you know, she's brand new to a new country and she's getting her feet into it and trying to figure it out. Yeah. So that definitely affected our relationship. And I think those are things that I kind of think about now, but I also had to like make those decisions and prioritize, you know, me at the time. Yeah. And, you know, and obviously, you know, we still have a cordial relationship, but, you know, I prioritized me and I knew it was a decision I had to make. Because, you know, I think when you're in those situations, you have to think about yourself first.
Yeah. You know, it's one of those decisions where there is no decision that is the one where you clearly win. And everything works out perfectly. Yeah. Like usually in a tough situation like that, something has to give and it's never easy. And I think that's an important takeaway from that story, because even with something as serious and as difficult as relationships, you know, tough decisions do have to be made, and, you know, carving, you know, your own path is different than when you follow a pre-existing path, right? And it doesn't mean that one is better than the other. I'm just saying that they're different.
Right.
It's like you mentioned, growing up, like, we weren't prepared for entrepreneurship because we were groomed for a nice corporate job with a stable salary and stability, upward mobility, all those kinds of things.
Right.
And then all of a sudden we chose to get off that path. All of a sudden you realize we need a whole new set of skills and because there are a whole new set of rules here.
Yeah.
And I don't know anybody I can look to that has that skills that was close to me. I didn't have a role model for that. So it was just like, I got to go figure this out. And of course, there are difficult decisions that have to be made, like in relationships, even like you said, you had to take care of yourself because you knew that if you didn't take care of yourself, then, well, how can you ever be in a position to work on some of these other areas?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think as an entrepreneur, those decisions you need to obviously weigh.
Yeah.
And, at the time, and I was very clear, like I have to prioritize me and this thing I'm building, for myself. I'm still at the early juncture in my career. I'm navigating this space. I'm nowhere near where I want to be. Yeah. And I had to choose my career over love, and relationships. And those are tough decisions to make. Yeah. Because no one wants, your partner doesn't want to hear that. Like I said, we're still cordial, but it worked out in the end, because, I was able to prioritize that. But, you also have to compensate for that. Yeah. Like you have your career might be going on an incline. Yeah. But your love life is on a decline. Yeah. And I think you're never going to always have everything that you want at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I think that it's so important that we think about all the different areas of life and set intentions and goals for all of them, because it's almost impossible for all of them to be in alignment with, who you are at any given moment. Because we're evolving, we're constantly changing. Maybe the relationship version of us is changing now, but the work version of us is, we're good. We're like stable, everything's fine. Right. So there'll be a point of misalignment here, and then we'll have to adjust that. And while we're adjusting this alignment, something about, I don't know, our health and our wellness is getting off alignment. Oh crap. Okay. Now I got to shift over. But if we have other areas that are strong, we can lean on those areas during tough moments, and sometimes the tough moment is in the relationship. Sometimes it's in the business, and then the relationship is strength. And that's where, you can lean on to when something bad is going on in another area.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I didn't necessarily realize that probably until the past year or two, because I was so about the career and making sure I was taking care of everyone else. Yes. And now I'm in the place where I think, the Digilog and where I'm at career-wise is I'm very comfortable where I'm at, and I can really be present and focus on a relationship, because I also need to find a partner, that understands where I'm at, and partnering, with that person it understands what you're doing, and that you can also have separate lives, but that those endeavors don't necessarily define who you are in a relationship. I'm Drew first, and where my partner is. Yeah, we can focus on that.
Let's now pick up in 2016 or wherever you think, so the thing I want to get to, I guess, is the inspiration. What was that first seed of the Digilog? Like, where did that begin? I mean, I think the scene is Wix, right? We're at Wix. So kind of let's talk a little bit about the seed of that idea. For the listeners, I want them to hear how some of these ideas are born, cultivated, and because they might have already had that seed, they just didn't notice it. Right. And I think by hearing stories like yours and others, you become aware, like, wait a minute, I think I had the seed of the idea like 3 months ago, and now I'm aware of it. So tell us a little bit about how that started to develop.
Yeah. I mean, I remember it was me and my co-founder, because we were very interested in the music, intersection of music and tech. Yeah. We went to a networking event. It was a paid event. I was like, okay, this is, I don't necessarily pay for networking events, but because there were certain people that were in the room, I remember paying $35 for it. Yeah. Pretty steep for an entrepreneur. Yeah. And I just remember the experience. The people in the room felt very just rushed to connect. It was really salesy. Yeah. It's like, all right, this is what I do. Here's my card, yada, yada, yada. And here's a conversation. Here's this panel speaker who's well respected and great. And then outside of that, like I said, the experience felt very like forced and contrived.
Yeah.
And we took that and we're like, wait, how do we not do that? Because I took nothing away from this experience.
Yeah.
And going back to Wix as like, how do we create, you have to start with a free model because you have to create an access point for people to be, and we can talk about the business later on, but it had to be free. And then finding a partner or a space to allow you to do that. So Wix was our first, I guess, partner in doing so. But we wanted a space where people felt seen, not rushed, inclusive. And like I said, that first event that had about 16, 15 people, you know, it wasn't like people were in a rush to like go to the next conversation.
Yes.
You know, and the excitement of people wanting to meet again really prompted us to say that I think we have something here. You know, like I actually like, you know, talking about what we're passionate about. It doesn't have to be every day, but we can get people outside of their bubble for one night, once a month. They feel like they're seen. And nothing beats talking to someone that gets who you are.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, understands. Because at times we feel like we're on an island by ourselves.
Yes.
Where like you can't talk to the things that you're passionate about with your parents or like your siblings. You know, you need to talk to people that are in it. And that gives you the confidence to understand what you're doing is you're on the right path and just not feeling lost in that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you find somebody like that, you don't have to explain all the context first.
Yeah.
You get to go right into that big idea you have and they get it. They're like, oh my God, like that makes sense because they feel what you already feel and they've been there, done that. So they get it right away. And I hear you. And that's why these communities or these events are so important in bringing, of course, people who are interested in the same things together. I love what you said about the $35 event. I mean, I think that's spot on. I feel like, if you pay $35 to go to a networking event, like your metrics driven. Like I need to give away, you know, I need to collect 20 business cards. I need to set up X number of meetings and so perhaps that's what drives the speed of like, let me just move on and all of this. Whereas when I go to another event, like more like yours, when I think about like some of the startup events that I went to in the city, I could talk to one person the whole time. And that for me, I'm like, this was the greatest event ever. Because that person and I like clicked. We had some really great ideas. We've got follow-up. We're going to connect again about something else. Like for me, that was the biggest win right there. I didn't need to meet with 10 people.
Inherently, we're communal, right? We're tribal. So I wanted to kind of just speak to that, you know, find, you know, that community. And one of our friends was like, hey, if you really want to do this, you got to like be intentional. This is not a night where you just like, you're going to have 300 people at your events tomorrow. You got to build brick by brick, really just have low expectations. And I think that's where it started. It was just community and networking. And that was it. For the first 6 months, like doing events in New York City.
So that's in 2016.
2016.
Okay. So that's when we're meeting. We're meeting when you're right at that beginning.
Yeah. So that was really the expectation, and that's for anyone that's starting out, because it's easy to get so ahead of yourself.
Yes.
And going back to our conversation earlier, the small things, and I think for us, that's the way we looked at it. Be open to like iterating, be open to get feedback and what they like about this. Yeah. Because you're building it with them.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. And feedback is driving a lot of this.
It is. And I think that's for anyone that's listening. You can't just be so set on what your vision is, because if you're approaching it from a community standpoint, it has to be a group effort.
Yes.
And it's not just your idea.
Yeah, that's I think such a key point right there. In when I think about the Startup Weekend community that I was a part of, you know, I didn't bring that to life, but when I joined it and took more of a leadership role, you know, we had to listen to everybody in terms of like what they wanted out of events, what topics did they want. You know, I never would have thought of music tech, by the way, on my own. When you helped us out with the music tech event as a judge, that's not an idea that I had, but someone brought it to me, and I thought, maybe there is something here. Well, turns out there was you already working on that, bridging these two together, music and tech. And so, you know, again, that comes from the people and listening.
Yeah, and listening. Yeah, I think that's probably one of the most important things that really drive the way that we program. Is getting feedback. Yeah, and putting your ego to the side and saying, I don't know everything.
Yeah.
Saying, I have the confidence to say that our community is communicating what they want, but the art of listening is just half of it, right? You have to listen.
Yeah.
And not just be in your own thoughts and trying to like, this is what we want you all to do, because it doesn't feel like a collaboration at all, you know?
Yeah, that listening part is, wow, so key. And I love what you, how you call it, the art of listening, because I feel like there's listening to what people are actually saying to you, but there's also listening by watching. How are people, and I'm sure you've done this, you're watching how they're working their way through this event. And you're probably noticing there's some friction there, there's some friction there, that's really working over there. And that's already probably getting, and I think that's an important thing when you're testing something out at the beginning stages. But before we go, too far into this, I wanted to just highlight this one moment where you notice the problem. And I think this is really important for anyone who's thinking about bringing some sort of community or any idea to life. Right. What's the problem that you're solving? And you were inspired by a problem. You went to that $35 event. It did not feel right. And then that drove a question. How do we not do this? How do we not do it this way? Yep. And that got you and your co-founder started.
Yeah, absolutely. When you see a problem, and I think just kind of like putting that switch in your brain, it's really just being solution oriented, because people are like, well, if this exists, why can't we create something that doesn't exist?
Yeah.
Right. Someone created this. We could do the same. And I think just really just unlocking that way of thinking, as opposed to just settling for it. Oh, I guess I have to settle for this. But why?
Yeah.
Why do you have to settle for the things that you don't like? And I feel like people probably felt the same way that we did. And, I think that's important when trying to solve a problem in a space that you're, trying to build a community in, thinking about it that way. And we can talk more about the other problems that we saw within the music and tech space, but with community being and networking being at like the centerpiece of it.
Yes. Yeah.
But obviously the community has evolved since then, and we've been able to address other problems, right? When it comes to like the music and tech job, resource space. We didn't know that was a problem.
Yeah. Until you got deeper into it.
Supporting artists independently. I like to say that 99%, they didn't necessarily feel supported, because now they have all these tools. Now it's like, how do I navigate this space as an artist?
Yeah.
So there's an artist discovery vertical. And then education, being the through line of it all, allowing us to kind of like find people that are in it to kind of talk and teach. And that's something that, has always been a centerpiece of what we've been doing. But like I said, going back to the community, like the networking part, we're just getting people in the room.
Yeah.
And we didn't necessarily know what else it would evolve into.
You've now grown to the point where you're solving more than just that original problem. The thing that I think is important for people to listen to is that when you're getting started with something, you might see someone like Drew doing what, he's doing with the DigiLog community. But if you compare yourself to him, like your day one to his like 6 years or almost 8 years now, actually, the problem there is that then it's easy to say, how do I solve all those problems on day one? And the key takeaway here is that you did not solve, in fact, you didn't even know all of those problems on day one. You focused on one problem on day one. And you probably even knew of some of the other problems. You just were like, I'm not solving those right now. And this is so important for any idea, reinvention, whatever you want to bring to life, is like find this really specific aspect of it and just go deep in there, have a blast doing that, and grow inside of that. And then you can come out and play with the other problems at that point. And your story is like a really great example of, we picked one problem, we went after that, and then we discovered others.
Yeah, no, that's so spot on. I didn't know it at the time, but looking back on it, that's what we did, And I think, it's easy to just really get excited about all these things. And as founders, you get excited.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, what if we did this? And when we did that, and you don't want to cap your creativity, but you got to put it to the side for a sec. And then there's a time and place. Yeah. And I always like to say there's a time and place. Yeah. And it's not right now. And I had to teach myself that.
Yeah. Create like a parking lot almost, and just put the idea somewhere. They're not going away forever. No. They're just for later.
Just for later. And even we'll talk about this later on, like even the idea of like putting together a conference is like, those are grandiose ideas, but that's in the parking lot.
Yeah.
And it's okay. And I think, like I said, really tweaking the way that we think in this kind of on-demand society.
Mm-hmm.
It's like everything doesn't have to happen now.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
it's like getting into basketball for the first time. You watch an NBA game and you see somebody, just do the craziest slam dunk, and you're like, I want to do that. It's like, that wasn't really good. That's not a good first goal to have. Your first goal should be like, maybe let's try a layup.
Yeah.
Let's just see if I can bounce that ball off the backboard and get it inside. And if it goes in there, maybe I can figure out the other parts. But I could see how if you go right for the slam dunk, you're going to be discouraged. You're not going to get there. You will guaranteed fail. And then you'll say, well, this didn't work out. Right. And it's so important to like step back and say for a moment, let me just try layups. And I feel like that's what you did. You started with layups. Yeah,
you just get the fundamentals. We talked about this earlier, just kind of like you can't just build without a foundation. And I didn't necessarily know, but I knew in my heart, like, I didn't want to rush this.
I love that. So take us into 2017.
Yeah, I think with 2017, we realized, all right, we're doing all these events in New York. How do we find a partner to do events in other cities?
Okay.
So, we're obviously successful at a co-working space like a Wix, but how do we find a partner who has co-working spaces in other cities? So WeWork, obviously big co-working company, a real estate company at the time. They were obviously really focused on creatives and entrepreneurs. And I reached out to, one of the locations to do an event. We did an event, it was successful. And I asked, what if we were able to scale this to other cities? What if we did an event in Detroit? What if we did an event in Austin? What if we did an event in Charlotte? And what if we did an event in LA? And that allowed us to really scale the conversation. Because we knew New York and LA weren't only like hubs for music. We wanted to create that experience of networking and inclusivity in other cities. And we were able to do that by partnering with a company like WeWork. Because for us, it was more so like the spaces are the same. You were just kind of replicating that experience in different cities.
It was something you didn't have to worry about, like city to city. You can just say, cool, if it worked here, copy and paste over there. At least we know venue-wise, it should operate more or less the same.
And that's the way we positioned it. They gave us a few bucks just from a sponsorship standpoint to produce it. So, I think they were really one of the first monetary sponsors. Wix was an in-kind sponsor. They gave us a space. We also worked with Microsoft. So Microsoft had a space on Fifth Avenue. Upstairs. So we used their space as well. And that allowed us to like create some validation, like, hey, here are some brands that are, really looking to participate and collaborate with us. It allowed us to like build that reputation a bit to like approach like a WeWork and say, hey, look at Wix and Microsoft. You should partner with us. And when you think about sponsorships, sometimes it's always not about getting that monetary sponsorship. The in-kind donations, the in-kind offerings, like whether it's a space, is a sponsorship. And I think that's for anyone that's thinking about finding sponsors is sometimes just having that brand name helps leverage, the next sponsorship. That could be a paid one.
What I'm hearing here is like the snowball effect, and it starts with one sponsor. And I like what you said about the in-kinds. Like, don't dismiss those. They may not seem as flashy because they didn't write a check, but when it comes to space in New York, it is expensive. It is so expensive. And so for somebody to say, the only reason my team and I were able to execute startup weekends, the one where you judged, that was who was in charge of that space? Verizon Wireless or Verizon was in charge of that. They were the owners. Thank goodness that was an in-kind, right? They're listed as a partner. And to your point, the brand equity that comes from that, that helped out. But of course, the space I don't even want to know what that space for 2.5 days, almost 3 days, because you got to prep, what 3 days of space in Manhattan costs. And to this day, I still don't know because I never had to get there because of all these partners, finding this. It's so key. Without that, you don't make this magic happen.
So just something to think about, when partnering. And like I said, you're not always going to get that big sponsorship in the beginning. But I think, to your point, the snowball effect, building some validation and proof and showing like, hey, we got support from reputable companies.
Yeah,
exactly. It doesn't have to be monetary.
Mm-hmm. So take us a little bit further. So as you start to expand into different cities, so I was recapping, right? Because we're learning, everyone here listening is learning about how to bring something like this to life. You started with a problem and then you attacked it with an event. Boom, that first event, maybe 15, 16 people. And then you just kept doing that over and over again, knowing that this was a long game, knowing that I'm going to have to do a lot of these before we hit 20, then 30, then 40 people. And then you hit a point where you thought, okay, now we know how to do this here. We found some partners, people helped us out. What if I can leverage these partners or find new partners to get into some other cities?
Yeah.
And now you're happening in other cities. What's the next challenge after that? Take us there.
So I got really ambitious the summer of 2017. As this community is growing, some of the volunteers become, pseudo team members. So they really want to be a part of it. At the time, Brandon, now as I want to give him a shout out, became one of the first core team members outside of my co-founder. And, I was inspired by an activation that Delta did, a kind of a 4-day event for creatives. And we reached out to Sennheiser, an audio company, about programming a free conference with them where they get to really display and showcase their products, educate, the music and tech community on spatial audio, and really just put their headphones in front of the creative community. And a lot was really inspired by my experiences at Beats and saying how do we put product and integrate it within culture, as opposed to positioning it as a product to buy, as opposed to, this is part of who I am. This is part of my brand identity.
Yeah.
And that's the way we positioned it. We were able to collaborate with them on a very small budget, to produce this 4-day event. We got a space for pretty cheap in 34th Street. We programmed, I believe, 9 masterclasses, 4 panels.
Wow.
It was really just focused on various things from spatial audio, VR. We talked about where the digital artist is. We had various workshops on production, and folks also got to listen to those panels using wireless headphones, which was a pretty cool thing, working with Sennheiser at the time. Just for the room, it was $15,000, right, to put a 4-day conference together.
Yeah.
We stretched the dollars and we got a lot of favors.
Yeah.
Because at the time, and this is something to note, when you're starting out, you don't really know the value of what you're bringing. And that was a teaching moment for me because that was steeply discounted, and I had to prove myself and prove that my next level up wouldn't be that amount.
Yeah.
But I also had to show that, we could do something for that amount. And obviously 15,000 is a lot, but, producing a 4-day event in retrospect is a small piece of what you could potentially really do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to just put that in for the room. I've never shared that before. So
I love this. This idea of finding these, again, I'm hearing more partnerships and how finding the right folks, can help you really scale, expand, or in this case, offer a longer form event. Then this was your first multi-day event of the community. And this happened in 2017.
Yeah. And it was free. 3 days of educational programming.
Yeah.
From Wednesday through Friday. And then Saturday was an all-day event of just live music.
And you were able to find that value proposition that really aligned with this partner, because I imagine that these master classes were very relevant to their work. And like you said in your story, your intention was to position their products front and center at this event. And so I think that the key takeaway there is as you're engaging partners, really think about what's in it for them. I think this is something I've seen with startup weekend events. At times, organizers will approach the partners, the sponsors, as I'm asking for a handout, help me out to bring this event. It's good for the community. But they didn't always say how is it good for you? How is this a good deal for you to get involved in? And I feel like what your story is sharing with us is you led with that. here's what's good for you. Like, this is going to help you out. I want to help you out. And now they wrote you a check. Granted, you made a lot happen with a very small check, and you brought a lot to life with a very small amount. Tell us more about that value part of it, though. Like, I think that was an interesting insight that you reflected on, that not really knowing, I guess, the value of what you're bringing to life, maybe at the beginning.
I think just understand, like, at the moment, I thought $15,000 was a lot, because you go from, small sponsorships, with companies, or no sponsorships, or in kind, and then you go to this like large amount of money, and in your mind, like, I haven't seen this large amount of money for this. So it's like a first time experience. But once you go through it, you're like, all these expenses add up. And you find yourself saying, well, this money wasn't enough. So that was a learning opportunity in that respect. But I think for those that are starting out, don't discount yourself. I think you should definitely do due diligence on, when producing something like that, if you decide to, is really mapping out the budget. And then what I've learned going forward now, obviously, unless you're meeting your costs and breaking even, or taking at least like a 30% margin from the initial sponsorship offering, or just having room for things to come up, as opposed to saying like, here's a flat number and not accounting for things, So that was a learning opportunity.
So you learned, like, here's what it's going to take to do it right. And we have to at least hit this number, and setting that standard, knowing that this is what it's going to take.
And I have to thank a lot of people who either offered their time for free, offer their services, gave us free discounts on certain things. And I get it. You have to sometimes ask for those favors in exchange for their services. All our speakers, and we asked them to speak for gratis, and it's one of those things where they just wanted to be a part of it. So just something to keep in mind, like, you can do these things, but definitely get stretched thin. If you don't think about like the full scope of the budget.
But a key takeaway here is that people do want to help. People do want to get involved. And, I'm thinking back to an organizer, a Startup Weekend organizer that I knew and I helped out back in 2014 when I was just getting involved with Startup Weekend. She wanted to host an event, a Startup Weekend, only for high school students. So it was just going to be youth focused. And, she wanted to target this at mostly underserved parts of the city. So on top of it, she didn't want there to be any ticket price or anything like that. So she wanted to work with schools to find the students. She had one $2,000 sponsorship. And I thought, okay, 2,000. Now, I never organized an event like this. But as I started getting into like what it takes, I realized, wait. And when it was done, and actually after I had done a few more events, I realized, wow, how did she do this with $2,000? And then I started thinking about all the things that she mentioned about how she paid for some of the stuff. Dunkin' Donuts, who provided breakfast and all that, I think they took whatever the bill was, they slashed 50% off of it. And then the last breakfast was on them. Like they said, Subway did lunches, similar kind of deal. And I asked her, Priscilla, how did you do that? And she goes, I just went in and asked. Like, I walked into the specific store. I didn't call like Subway headquarters or whatever. I just went to the one that was next to the venue. And I said, I'm doing this thing. It's free. Can you help me out? And they, they helped out. They said, yeah, I can't do it for free completely, but, maybe at cost or whatever. And I'll just give it to you for this much. And in some cases they just said, and let me do the one meal. Like, I'll pick up one of those meals and all that. And when I'm hearing your story, it's like, that is a big part. A bunch of little ones add up to really big impact. But I think that for anyone listening, we got to ask. We got to ask. And I will admit that many times I hesitate. Like, I'm afraid to ask. I feel like, but I'm not worthy of them giving me anything. Like, or why is my thing good enough for them to want to do something if I can't offer them something really, really amazing of value? This is a reminder, your story, for me personally, and I think for others, is that it's not always about that. It's not always about what we can do for them. Sometimes it's that they want to help. They know that, look, you're getting started and I want to do something to help you get started. So just ask. And I can't give you everything. I can't write checks, but I can hook you up with some of the product we have, or I can hook you up with my time or some people's time to do that thing. And this is so important. It sounds like this was key to the early years, and still even today, I think, right?
To this day, for sure. And we want to pay for it too for other organizations that are starting out. Like even with Digital Days, we had other organizations part of it. because I want to make sure they had visibility as well, because even where we're at, we still want to be able to put everyone else on as well. And I think that's important. And like I said, I appreciate everyone who participated and volunteered their time, even in past events, just not knowing where it could go, but just being part of it and just believing it. Believing in it.
So take us into now the pre-COVID years, like leading up to the 2018, 19.
Yeah, so learned a lot from the Sennheiser activation. Continued to work with them throughout, leading into 2018. And then we were able to like partner on an event at South by Southwest. So that was our first South by Southwest. It wasn't an official event, but we did an event in Austin, did like a really cool panel discussion, highlighting the Austin music community. And leading into that, because of the Digilog, allowed me to also, I wouldn't say recruited, but, my friend at the time, JD, was head of digital at Def Jam. And he was like, I really love what you're doing with the Digilog. Like, you understand the social landscape, you understand the intersection of music and technology, culture is that. Do you want to consult for me at Def Jam? So that was probably like a huge pivot for me, just from a personal standpoint. Because now I get to like be part of this legitimate company, but also as a result of what I was able to build with the team, the Digilog, it gave me validation. It was like people are noticing what you're doing. This is just like, this is a grassroots thing anymore. This is like, the industry is noticing. And I thought that was a really cool moment. And fast forward, like as I'm working there, I'm still programming Digilog events. And we were able to partner with Dolby Audio at the time to do a 2-day event in New York. So that was our last really big activation in 2019 before the pandemic. And at the time, it was really like a compliment. I knew I wanted to focus on the Digilog. I just didn't know where it could go. It was like, we throw these really great meetups. We're community oriented. But I think leading into the pandemic, as problems kind of grew and we listened to the community, the other verticals started to kind of come up. The other problems were like, okay, we've mastered this event space. Now we can focus on the other problems. And that's when we decided to focus on music careers, artist discovery, understanding that our audience within the community are also different. So you have your music professionals, your students that want to like get opportunities to get work, learn about roles. Artists want to get opportunities to showcase their music, learn about these different creative tools. And then you have the multi-hyphenates that are kind of like in between. And then you also have the music lovers that want to come in and pivot from their like non-music jobs. So we're just like understanding how to like segment the way that we message within the Digilog. So just something to note when building community, it's like understanding like who in the community is part of it and how to like start to like really evolve the way you talk to them, because they're growing, right? We started.
They're not the same people who showed up on the first day.
Exactly, they're not the same people, and that's something to know.
And this goes back to what we talked about when it came to what problem you solved. At the beginning, you solved one problem and that was it. But you mentioned as the years went on, you started tackling new problems. And it sounds like some of those problems came not from what you might have imagined on day one, but rather as your audience grew, you realized, wait, they've got new problems, and maybe we can get onto that career problem, or maybe we can get onto that, skill development problem, or whatever it might be that they're now encountering that they've been with us for 2 or 3 years.
Exactly. And I didn't realize it, when we tackled the music career problem, all we wanted to do is just post music jobs on socials. So we did it on Monday, and people were like, this is amazing. How do we like take job descriptions, make them into like bite-sized social pieces and make it super digestible, as opposed to reading like full-on job descriptions and finding them. And we decided to like multiply that to 2 days and really build a newsletter. And then you fast forward during the pandemic, I needed to find someone that can really lead this. So someone I had worked with at Def Jam, who led a lot of our recruiting and our internship programs. His name is Ian. He's our head of recruiting now, and he oversees our music careers. Was like, we need to partner with you, because we're already doing this,
Yeah.
but I need to find someone that really understands the space and can help really grow this space for us.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, like I said, the evolution of it,
Yeah.
starting during the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
especially when people were like losing jobs.
Yeah.
Students were like, didn't know how to like navigate internships. And, you know, during the pandemic too, we decided to program a virtual music career summit.
Okay.
And essentially that was an interesting way to like really, you know, program something virtually,
Mm-hmm.
because all our experiences are RRL,
Yeah.
but it allowed us to really say like, hey, we could do this virtually.
Yeah.
And the whole premise of it was to get different people in different roles
Mm-hmm.
to talk about their roles in relation to an artist campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So I do marketing, so this applies to this mock artist. Oh, I do radio, this applies to this mock artist. So we contextualize their roles in relation to like a mock campaign
Yeah.
that we're like, I guess, workshopping.
Mm-hmm. And what I'm hearing also is that because it was digital, it sounds like the value proposition that you and your team came up with was a little different. It was altered, or it was custom for the channel, because it's now digital. Like you said, everything before that was in real life.
Right.
So that's a different like value proposition, right? Like I get to just walk up and meet a stranger. That may not happen in a virtual environment, but it sounds like you came up with a format. You and your team came up with a format and a way of presenting the value and delivering it virtually that would not only satisfy, but it would really address a real problem. And I think that's a key thing. You know, when we think about during the pandemic, when events were transitioning from in person to virtual, for many, it was just, can we get a camera in front of it and just live stream it? But that doesn't work. Like, you can't live stream what was once like in person. That was designed for in person. That was designed for humans to interact and to have a captive audience and all of that. You can't keep someone on their laptop for 3 straight days. Like, not if they're just watching a live stream of a bunch of people talking. Like, that's not going to work for 3 straight days.
No.
You have to create a completely different experience. You got to reimagine, reinvent the experience altogether. And it sounds like, tell us a little bit more about it, because I feel like you guys kind of reinvented what the event was, or would have been if had it been in person.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what happened. I think people would always, I guess, you know, position us as this, you know, music and tech event experience, right? This community. But like, so what's going to happen with the Digilog now that there's COVID? I was like, hold up, there's this thing called Zoom. And we decided, you know, immediately I was like, all right, I know we had a panel scheduled. We're going to do a Zoom panel. No one knew what that was.
Like,
I didn't know what that was.
Yeah.
But I was like, the Zoom thing is working. We can share the screen and we can have various people. We did our first Zoom panel. We didn't have like a webinar mode.
Oh my gosh! So
everybody was in it. So I explicitly told everyone, don't show your face.
Yeah, only the panelists can show their face.
Yeah. So that was a learning experience.
Yeah,
and it was like a one of the free models. So
yeah,
we had a limited time, and then also we can only admit 100 people.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
it was a learning experience. So learn from that, because people are like, I tried to join, but I was like, we're navigating this thing.
Yeah,
but you know, with Zoom, we started doing virtual panels, which was great. We also took advantage of like the IG lives. So we had like talent shows every Friday, like where artists would like share their music. We'll do like a monetary prize, like a small prize, $50. It was like, all right, cool. Like, we're virtually programming. I remember we did like a movie night. Everyone watched the Travis Scott documentary on Netflix.
Yeah.
We, you know, for some reason we were able to like stream that on Zoom.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then we took advantage of other platforms like Twitch. Started like live streaming like performance pieces. Asked artists to record their performances at home. Yeah. And then we would like premiere it. Yeah. As if it was a real performance. And then obviously, you know, you have platforms like Clubhouse, which was like the Clubhouse era. And we were able to take advantage of that because it was like the Wild Wild West, but within the Digilog, we programmed discussions, you know, every week.
Oh, wow.
And
So you really tapped in. You looked at all these channels and each one offered their own little kind of value proposition, and you retrofitted your value into that channel.
exactly.
And then said, here we go. We got a new product. One of our products is in Clubhouse. Another product is on Twitch. Another product is on IG Live. And the list goes on and on. Zoom, so on and so forth.
It's like where is everyone congregating?
Yes. That's a powerful question.
Yeah.
Where's everyone congregating?
Yeah. So I think that's one of the biggest lessons. It allowed us to really grow our community globally.
Yeah.
Because we weren't so tied to just events in person. And that's where we saw and you asked this question earlier, like that's where I was like, all right, this is a real thing.
When was that moment? Because you've been on a journey since 2010, pivoting out of banking and into the music world. And that journey, you gave us a little bit of a walkthrough of how that looked. When was the moment in maybe the Digilog specifically where you felt like, all right, we're really in this. Like we're now playing this game? Because, the way I always think about it is like, I could watch soccer matches on television and I just want to be on that pitch so badly. And then there's a moment like where I've busted my butt and now I'm on the pitch. But just because I'm on the pitch, I haven't won, I haven't scored, nothing has happened, but I'm on the freaking pitch. Like I'm now playing the game that I've been dreaming about playing. I'm in that career, I'm in that world, I'm in that whatever that is. For you on this journey, when was that moment when you felt like, I'm doing this. Like this is actually happening. Like I still have many wins to go and I have to score goals, but I'm doing this.
I think really it was like towards the tail end of the pandemic because, for me, like I said, I think the idea of the Digilog was just bringing people out in person.
Yeah.
And I didn't really see past that because I didn't know what it could be, until we addressed problems. And I think part of the growth of that is being able to like understand that if there's problems in place, those are the clues to understand how your community or your platform will iterate.
Yeah.
Because you have to listen to your community. And I think it's not just about, we're gonna scale or grow. We could have created like an app or you can't just create things that people don't need.
Yeah.
And I think for us, we just kind of stayed consistent with the events until the pandemic, but towards the tail end of the pandemic, when we were able to do all these virtual events, really tackle the various challenges of the various verticals, whether it's music careers and job resources, artist discovery, and seeing like how our reach has now kind of like surpassed just the States.
Yeah.
We're like talking to like people from Europe, the community in Asia, like there's like people tuning into our events, and I'm like, okay, this is real. How do we, outside of sponsorships, build a business model? Really not just focus on sponsorships to like drive our programming, but create a business model. And the first thing that I thought about was like, outside of just posting, the jobs within music careers, is how do we start like a recruiting agency within the music tech space? How do we be an agency for executives and be a resource for partners to find incredible people, POCs, women from the community that can really be part of your company? That part of the business has been our biggest revenue driver. We don't publicly speak on it.
Yeah.
We're gonna now we'll do a formal announcement in 2024, but it's allowed us to see a void in the space because it didn't exist. There's a few people that do it and do it really well, but it's not just about getting a recruiter and looking on LinkedIn and saying this person works in music. But for us, because we're in it, we understand the nuances of it. And we also have the connection of candidates within the community. And that's the difference between a recruiting agency and the Digilog in respect to music careers. So there's that. We started a Patreon for like our super community members. So we created content behind, I like to say, an investment wall. It's not a paywall. They invest in the content that they're a part of. They get all these perks. They get one-on-ones with me, So I had to create a space where, even I talked about this now, it's about creating not just access, but being able to create a funnel where like, it's not just about stretching myself thin and being able just to speak to people, but how do I make sure I can also monetize off, the education I'm bringing to the table, or my knowledge, and it's not about just free.
Yeah.
And I think teaching our community, what's free and what's invested in was a critical point. At that point leading into it, everything was free.
Yeah. That I think is such an important journey, difficult, scary journey to traverse, to go from free to paid. A lot of times when I work with entrepreneurs or creators, I should say, some of them have ideas for things they want to bring into the world that are free. And one of the things that I've learned as well is that, and I love how you use that term investment, that to look at it as an investment if they're, if this is something they're buying into, because there's value here. And this is important. And it's important to recognize the value. And I mean, I know that when I buy something, I take it seriously. I don't just, on a whim do it. I mean, I buy some things on a whim, but when I'm thinking about, maybe an investment that's more significant in professional development or whatever, I mean, it's something I give a lot of thought to. And then once I'm in it, I'm in it. Like I'm all the way in it. And I mean, I do appreciate some of the free stuff. Like I love content creators who have their YouTube channels, so much great content for free. But hey, look, if you want to take it up another notch, we've got this other thing going on. And I appreciate the effort that goes into making that like a top-notch program. So I expect to pay, but I know that also being on the side where, when I wanted to start charging for things because I wanted to make it sustainable. And it was, I mean, there was a mental block there for doing that. Did you go through something similar? Like, was there a mental block or challenge in charging for what you had done for free? Because I imagine you also obviously enjoyed this too. So it's almost like you would do this for free. If somebody else was paying you perhaps or covering your bills, you'd happily do this for free all day.
Exactly. And I think I got to thank the team for really just kind of letting me know, like, we're hitting an inflection point. This can be, a passion project that we can do, or we can grow this into a business.
Yeah.
And those are the conversations. Those are the real conversations you need to have, because there's the opportunity cost of spending time doing it.
Yeah.
Involving people. Yeah. And putting food on people's plates, right?
Exactly.
It's not just about, we're doing something for a great cause, but how do we make this sustainable for everybody and worthwhile? And it was a great, like I said, educational point for me. Once, I decided like, hey, we need to monetize, create an investment wall. So the next time we did a virtual summit for music careers, it was a ticketed event.
Yeah.
Because they knew what the experience prior.
Yeah.
So but now it's like we have to support, our programming throughout the year, and that's real. It's not everything is free, and if you want to be part of this community and you support what we do, then you would invest, $15 out of your money, because we know that we're giving you, 20-fold of what you're investing in.
Exactly. Yep. And so this is fair. More than fair.
More than fair.
Way more than fair.
More than fair, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it allows us to continue doing this. But I also like how creative you've been in terms of all the different ways you allow people to contribute to this. You talked about Patreon and all of these other ways that people can buy into this and access, more content or more of that value. And I think that's also really important for anybody listening, including me, as I think about what are all the different ways. Like, it doesn't have to just be this one size fits all solution. There could be many ways. As I'm building and launching this community, the School of Reinvention, I right now I only have one way to get into it, and it's you pay for this monthly membership. And to your point, like, I kept it like super low price because I want it to be accessible, but at the same time, like, I want it to be clear, like, you're getting like 20 times the value for this. And that's what I'm really like going after, is trying to build that. That said, what I'm learning from you is that there's also other ways. There could be, maybe there's a Patreon offer, maybe there's, something, another product offer or something, other ways that someone can get in or taste it or try it and see like, okay, like this is, and then if they feel compelled to do a membership or a monthly kind of thing, then they could do that as well. And for anyone listening, what are all those entry points? How do you make this so that people can come in and be more actively involved?
Yeah, I mean, obviously our events are the first access points, and then obviously being the way that we're active on socials and we communicate, we offer a free newsletter. Like 90% of the things that we do are already free in my mind.
Yeah,
it's a freemium model, and it's effort and work that people are working on, and outside of that, it's like taking the extra step where, we don't want to charge our community for a lot of things. So how do we charge companies? So more of like a B2B strategy and saying like, hey, outside of sponsorships, how do we charge companies to post jobs for us? And, how do we charge companies, to sponsor our newsletters?
Yep.
And because we're building audience, how do we charge companies to also work with us on these events and sponsorships? But seeing all the different things that we offer, is trying to find the right partners to work with us. We're not charging our community for everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
because there is value also being created for these partners.
Yeah, and thinking about it that way, so it's not just B2C.
Yeah,
going back to business, it's B2B.
Yeah, and yet another revenue stream that allows you to keep the lights on, put food on the table for you and your team, but also grow this and find awesome new problems to solve, no doubt, as you continue to evolve. Let's fast forward to present day, because, you and I reconnected recently.
Yeah.
You were celebrating your a pretty awesome victory. Tell us about the awesome victory, the Digilog Days. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Digilog Days is our multi-day music and tech conference that we just had. It was a 2-day event, but also we had programming in the week called Digital Week. But the 2-day event consisted of like a music career fair, our artist discovery expo, panel discussions, resume reviews, mentor sessions. We also had executive coaching sessions for our executives. It was our global meetup. And I was saying earlier, it's really just like a culmination of, and really a celebration of everything that we do throughout the year.
Yeah.
It's our last big event for the year. And with all the small meetups that we do leading into it and virtual events or workshops, is really a celebration to bring the community out across the US, across the world, and say like, hey, we're celebrating Digilog as a community this year across 2 days. And it brings the community out, whether we did a meetup in Nashville or Chicago. Now folks from the Nashville community and Chicago community get to like meet each other and celebrate together. And we did this in Brooklyn, New York. It's our second year. Last year, we did one event for 1 day, but because of the demand, they were like, well, can you make this 2 days?
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, well, this is going to be a tweak.
The title's going to change. You have to add an S at the end of days.
I was like, yeah, we can do that. And I think that's also managing the way that you look at things, because it took us almost 6 years to build produce our big official conference. Obviously, we had that multi-day event back in 2017.
Yeah.
But I learned so much from that.
Yes.
That $15,000 budget where like, okay, I know what it's going to take to now produce a proper conference.
Yes. Yeah. That was a seed. That was a project that grew into something more, but not right away.
Not right away.
I love this, how you talk about 6 years, because speaking in those terms is so important. When we read articles and all that, everything seems like an overnight success. But no, overnight successes take about 6 years, take about 7, 10 years, sometimes 20.
It takes a long time, and you got to challenge yourself. I think producing the first one, and just for the audience, like, it was definitely a very challenging time for me, because it was the first time really producing a conference in this magnitude. And I'll be honest, like I bear the weight of it. We had a lot of sponsors for the first one, and they're investing money, and you have the expectation of everything that you're doing outside of the conference. Like, you have this reputation now. Like, how is this going to like unfold?
Yeah.
I think I remember that August, just so that, I felt like creatively challenged at the time. I just felt like, not saying not motivated, but very anxious. So for the room, I went to a therapist, just allowed me to talk through it. It was really important for me, because, sometimes you can be in your own thoughts a lot. And that allowed me to like really just like reframe my mind. I'm like, this should be a fun event. You're doing this with people that you care about, and it's going to be fine. Yeah. And that's the way I approached it. Like, things will come up, but, we got to be fluid and not, put that pressure on me. But yeah, it's something that I kind of walked away with leading into this second year, where I feel like I had the most fun. Yes, it was a lot of work. We had a wellness week, 2 weeks of wellness afterwards.
Yeah.
No meetings. But I think this year was just like was day and night.
Let's talk about wellness. mental wellness, mental health. You mentioned working with a therapist. Let's talk a little bit about this and whatever it means to you on the journey, anything you've discovered. I mean, so there's no real specific moment. Maybe you talk more about what you were just referring to, but I think this is really important for people to hear as something grows, right? It could seem all good. From maybe at the beginning, it seems like, oh, I can't wait until 5 years from now or 10 years from now. It's going to be so awesome and it's going to be like a breeze, like it'll be great. But there's still challenges.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's so much pressure to create a standard for yourself, but let alone create a standard for what you're creating.
Yeah.
In doing so, you become really obsessed with that standard. And I think that's what it drove me. It just, you get burnt out because you want everything to be great. You want everything to be perfect. And the reality is it's not. Things will come up. There's a percentage of things that won't work out. And you just have to be okay with it. And I think that's the challenge as an entrepreneur. That's the challenge of being a leader because you have the weight of not only your team, but now you have the weight of the community.
Yeah.
And I had to separate myself from that. I was like, I am not the Digilog. I am Drew first.
Yeah.
I am part of the community. And I think that's a separation discussion that I had to really have with myself because the Digilog is us. It's Paulina, it's Brandon, it's Rogers, it's everybody.
Yeah.
It's not just me.
Yeah.
And we're doing this together. And I think being able to delegate workload, being able to be accessible but not available.
I like that.
That's something that I learned, and not put all the pressure on me.
Yeah.
I said we're doing this together. That was the biggest difference. And I think I can really focus on who I am, the self-care that I need every weekend, being able to take the time just to spend time with family.
Yep.
But there's parts of me that will come up with ideas randomly and shoot text, and my team's like, why are you texting us? But it's knowing that it's your work in progress. You're aware of it.
Yeah.
Taking times like today to be part of this. Taking times for the weekend to enjoy.
Yeah.
After
this, you're going to connect with friends, right?
Yeah. To be with people that you care about. It's a journey, and I think now just really focusing on my self-care and my health.
Yeah.
And not be in a position where you're utterly exhausted.
Yeah.
And you can enjoy what you created.
Yeah.
As a team. And that was a lesson from year 1 to year 2.
I love what you said about your team, saying dude, what are you doing texting us because that means that there's a standard. That means that there is a standard and that you guys maintain that standard. And that's so important. That's so cool that is just a rule. And I love what you said about after the event, we took 2 weeks of wellness, where we just, no meetings. So you had that rule. And so it's a part of the fabric of your culture that you're building. So I think that's really cool to hear. And I love this other idea that you shared. You didn't say it explicitly, but, I think we can read between the lines. You have a team. And that's so important too. I mean, I for so many years, I was doing this alone. And my wife, when she got involved with School of Reinvention, the first thing she did was start to build a team. And it's a game changer. And now we're looking to 2024, maybe adding a couple more people or, bringing some others back and just, growing that. And honestly, I hear you, it's so, I'm so excited now because I know there's so much more we can do. And, and it can't just be, about what I can do, because then it's so limited. I mean, I could try to do it all, but it will be incredibly limited. And the quality will be on some things so-so, and on some things it'll be great, but on many more it will be so-so. And it's better to just bring someone who's great on this, great on this, great on this, and then I can focus on being great on this, and then all together, it comes out way better, a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts. And it sounds like that's what you've got going on now.
Exactly. It was a learning curve.
Yeah.
Because when you're a founder, this is your baby.
Yeah.
You're attached to things and you're attached to decisions. But you have to give those decisions and delegate those decisions.
Yeah.
And empower people. Because my thing is, how do you build legacy within what you're creating? And that's something I think about when I think about companies and organizations where, you as a leader, you may have been the engine to start it.
Yeah.
But who is gonna continue to run this ship?
Yeah.
when you decide to pivot or decide to step back.
Yeah.
You know, and how do you maintain that level of standard and experience when you're not there? That's something for any founder to think if you want to, you know, think you're thinking about long term.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I'm really trying to do. I'm trying to empower this team to know that I can't be part of every decision. And if I decide to pivot in 10 years and be more an advisor, like there's going to be a leader that understands the core values of what we created.
Yeah.
And take it to this next chapter.
It reminds me of something that for me, for us in the School of Reinvention, one of the big breakthroughs that my wife and I had in some of our planning sessions last year or earlier this year was to ask ourselves a different question around how do we build this in such a way that it could be sold? That was like such an important question. It seems so subtle, but when we got into that conversation, everything changed. Like the way I talked about production of things and content, it all changed. I started thinking about the other humans that have to be involved because, well, then I can't sell this ever, or I can't and I'm not even saying that I want to, but I want to build it as if I was going to sell it, so that I know that I can also step away for a week or a month and go on holiday and just enjoy time. Or if I need a break from this, I can take a break from this and it won't die. It doesn't just go away because I'm gone. Similar to you, like I feel like you've got it to a point where you can step away for a minute and, you know, your team knows what to do to keep the value running.
Yeah, that's so important. I think that's something that I've come to terms with. Yeah. But I'm glad that I have the confidence of a great team that have also grown into their roles, are challenged, you know, whether it's the intern that's now the coordinator, or the manager that now is the director. Like they're challenged and they're growing into it. And the other part too to note is that the people that you started with will also pivot. Yeah. You know, and you know, I took it personally when folks decided that they didn't want to be part of it anymore. And I was like, okay. But you have to realize that you're the person that loves it the most. And that's okay. And you can't take it personally because this is not, everyone has their pathways, their life. And I had to come to terms with that too. Yeah. You know, and it's okay. People will outgrow their roles. Some people will stay, but the realization there always will be part of the digital logs and the history of it is that it's at the different junctures of where we're at. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because in the School of Reinvention, I'm like, oh, crap. That's like what I teach. It's like as your values, as your passions, as your purpose evolves, you got to realign things. And that might mean pivoting to another kind of career. And I'm like, so if anybody ever came to me and said, Roger, I'm ready to move on, I'm like, damn it, I have to understand this because this is literally what I teach. And you're doing exactly what I said to do. I was like,
you're listening to me.
Yeah, damn it. I was hoping you didn't listen because I want to keep you forever. But no, but it's so true. It's so true. We have to like respect that and be prepared for that. I want to lift up something quick and then we're going to start wrapping up. But I want to lift up something you said when things were getting or feeling overwhelming with the event, and that you had this shift in your mindset where you went from paying attention to the challenges, the stressors of the event, and you focused instead on, you know what, I'm here to have fun. I'm here to add value. I'm here to create a magical moment for people. Not those exact words, something along those lines. And that made a difference for you. And I want to bring that up because I think that for anybody who's trying to bring something new to life, you will guaranteed feel the pressure, the stress, the fear of not being able to deliver something quality to your audience or to your customer or whatever it might be that you want to do. And when that happens, you know, what you said is something that I do a lot is I focus on the person that I'm helping rather than on the product that I'm delivering. When I focus on the product, I worry about a lot of things going wrong. When I focus on the person, I know that at the end of the day, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to serve this person. So it may not look super pretty, but by the end of it, they're going to say, wow, that was awesome. Like that guy stuck it out, you know, it didn't all work out perfectly, but he delivered at the end. Like in the end, he delivered. And that shift, I heard you say, and I want to lift that up because I want people to listen, that's so important. Anytime you're scared, like, I mean, I do a lot of public speaking. A lot of times people are like, how are you so comfortable doing this kind of stuff and getting up in front of audiences? And I go, well, I actually get nervous because I worry about my talk. I worry about whether the words will land right, whether the jokes I plan are going to land and people are going to laugh. All these kinds of things are easy to worry about. But what I always make sure to do as, you know, as it's game time is approaching, I shift to the audience. I always think, this person, why did they come here? They came here for, X, Y, and Z reason. That's it. Like, that's all I'm going to focus on. And no matter what the slides say behind me, no matter what words I had pre-programmed, if I got to change them, I change them, because I'm here for them, not for me, not for my product, not for my talk, not for my words, not for my slides. And at the end of the day, that for me, it always is calming. I don't know, like, I just feel calmer when I think about that.
That's real. Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. Like, even it could be like a small, like, thank you message or from a community member, and I'm like, ooh, this, sometimes because it feels taxing because you're doing so many things.
Yeah,
and I don't want to say it feels like work because you're working towards something great, but when you have that nice little message or a team member says something nice about what we're working on, that can really switch gears. So to your point, like, focusing on the person and focusing on, like, the individuals that you're supporting. So those have been big, especially in tough moments where you're like, you feel overwhelmed. Sometimes you look back on what you've done, and you're like, it's like a highlight of real, like, oh, here's some of you come a long way. And I think that's important when you're growing, to understand where you started
along the journey, so people can learn from you in terms of, like, what powers you how do you keep this, this system of Drew learning, growing, developing. What would you consider a needle mover in your life, a strategy, a habit, a practice, something that you're like, this is really important. Like, I don't think I am where I am without this practice in my life, or without this habit or routine or strategy in my life. Is there anything that I'm sure there's a few, but if you had to pick one, what's one that you would share with the audience that they might say, oh, I think I'll try that?
I mean, for me, it's just where you really give yourself at least 2 hours, an hour of just you time. Really just get into your thoughts and slow your thoughts down. And for me, it's walking in the park, listening to music as a fan, not as someone who's trying to market music. Listen to my favorite podcasts and just being a student and not thinking about other things. And it allows you to just really just collect your thoughts, because the way I look at it, we're constantly at a certain speed throughout the week. Like, we're just like heading to our next destination. Trying to drive this fast car through traffic. And at some point you got to just, like, park it somewhere and just be able to kind of just look at the view and just enjoy it.
Smell the roses.
You got to your destination, like, now you get to enjoy it. So that's been really helpful for me, and just enjoying that couple hours where I get to really collect my thoughts. I need to, I think this is a work in progress, working on my, like, morning routine. Because days could fluctuate. And also having time to, like, read and spend time with family has been big. I don't talk about work stuff with family. It is really about them. So just kind of knowing when to engage, unless they ask me. It's not about that. I used to do that.
And there we go. You would bring the work to them.
They're like, Drew, stop it.
Let's talk about something else.
It's like, you're obsessed with this thing. So I think that now I'm just really working. It is a work in progress for everybody. Balance is a work in progress. And I'm also excited, just like, my next chapter, like the iteration of, like, who I am as a person, like what I want to learn. And I put my 10,000 hours towards music. Like, in tech, but, like, my other interests, whether it's sports, I love, English football and soccer. Man. How do I get into that world, in some capacity?
How are you getting into that world?
I'm working towards it.
But what do you like? How do you enjoy it? Like, do you watch matches, like,
watch
Saturday mornings?
Saturday, I play FIFA, decompress.
Okay, I like it.
I play that on a daily because, I think part of being creative is also being a kid. And I never want to lose that. And that's something that I've learned, because as you learn and become an adult, we put caps on what we do. There's a law or rule. It's just like at one point you're just like, I don't even know what to do. And
what can I do?
What can I do? And I think in the world where we're in, you have to think beyond the box, like beyond the cap. And I think playing video games is, people can have their feedback on it, but allows me to really just decompress and just kind of like ideate and think. And that's like kind of like my veggie state, where I'm just like literally just actually not thinking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just completely disconnecting from everything else.
Yeah. So that's my other thing, walking and then playing FIFA.
Yeah, man. There's one of mine right there. Legos.
Ooh. No, I love that. And I think that's just my advice for anyone that's an entrepreneur. Like,
Yeah.
like, if there's an inner child in you, like, don't, just suppress it.
Yeah.
Celebrate it.
Yeah.
And I think I'm seeing that now, even with my parents, like, they're not as, they're not the parents that I thought they were.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you're actually like, I can hang out with you for a short period of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's something you think about as you grow up as an adult too.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm excited to kind of enter that next chapter, like really kind of thinking beyond what we're conditioned to think as adults, like where our caps are.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, I think about this, now, we have a 1-year-old and, I think about, I want to play. I want to play with her. I want to do things like whatever I don't think I will act too much like an adult. I'm sure at times I will.
Yeah.
I'll have to. But I also want to be a kid, with her. I want her to see that. I want her to see like, nah, be silly. Like, my dad was silly a lot. So I ended up being like pretty silly. I mean, I'm not doing it right now, but off this, like when I'm at home with my family or whatever, I'm being silly.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, I'm going to confess one thing that I do that I've never actually said. The only person who knows I do this is my wife. So now you're about to know, and a few people that might be listening here, maybe a few more than that. But I hide. I like hiding and scaring my wife. Yeah. So like I will hide maybe behind the door or under my desk. And then she's like, oh. And I love like playing a prank on her. Like, I open and close the front door. So then she thinks, did he go out? He didn't mention he was going out. Like, where did he go? So then I'll hear her open the door, but I'm hiding like under my desk.
Yeah.
She's like, what the hell? Like, and then she's looking around everywhere. Did I hear the door? She's doubted. I'm just like cracking up under the desk, and I might have to wait like 20 something minutes because then she gives up for a minute. It's like, I'm going to go back to drying my hair. And I'm like, damn it. All right, I'll wait it out. I'm going to do this right. But I love, it's just like, why not?
Why not?
Like, why have a cap on that? Why say like, no, that's not a grown thing to do. Like, screw that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I hide and I make Legos.
No.
There we go.
No, I think those are awesome. And I think that's for the people in the room, like, just like if you enjoy sewing or you enjoy Comic-Con, whatever, the things that you enjoy.
Yeah, there's many things.
Just like celebrate it.
Yes.
And you can still be the business person, entrepreneur.
Yep.
As well.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think part of that too is just being comfortable with who you are is helped me navigate where I am now.
Wow, that's deep right there.
Yeah.
Being comfortable with who you are has helped you navigate where you are and what you do today.
Yeah, just being in the room, just being me and not overthinking about like, I got to be this person.
Yes.
And I think that's definitely helped, just in being real. And because, I think we have this idea that people revere you or revere us. And I'm like, no, I'm just like you.
Yeah.
we're not too far apart.
Yeah. I have my moments. I like having fun too and doing all those things.
Yeah.
I love that, man. That right there is, I think, a perfect place to wrap up because a big part of this whole platform of the School of Reinvention is really about making sure that we stay aligned. We keep our life in alignment with who we are and who we're becoming. And so to hear you say that one of the biggest breakthroughs for you or one of the things that powers you and drives you is knowing who you are and, of course, being comfortable with who you are. And that helps you navigate where you go. That's huge right there. So I'm going to wrap up there, man. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks, I appreciate the stories and just helping us understand like how you brought something really special to life. And again, like, for anybody on the journey listening, if there's someone thinking about starting their own reinvention journey. I mean, this is what it looks like to build it. Overnight success takes about 6, 7, 8 years, almost 8 years now. And it really, if we go back to 2010, when it all started in the music world for you, I mean, now we're looking at 13, 14 years that you've been on this journey, but you were having fun all this time. You were doing things that you enjoyed. You were living out things that fulfill you. And that was all part of the journey. And now here you are, you've built something really special. You've made this your way of living, which is super cool, and it's sustainable. You've got an awesome team. I'm super excited for you, man. I'm really excited. And it's so great to have first met you, when this particular part of your life was just getting started. That's so cool, man, to see how far it's come.
Yeah, no, it means so much. Like I said, full circle moment, to have the platform to share, my story, but also to be able to kind of also be part of this. Like I said, I'm really excited to see where the School of Reinvention goes and all the guests that you're going to have in the future. I'm just excited to be at the early stages of it.
Yeah. Appreciate you.
Yeah. And we're going to obviously do this again.
Yeah, we are.
Part 2.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I can't wait to hear where, Digilog is, and for you to hear where School of Reinvention is. Yeah. So for anyone interested in learning more about the Digilog and all of Drew's projects and connecting with him on LinkedIn, all the links will be available in the show notes, so you'll be able to find it there. Thank you again.
Amazing. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thanks, Roger.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the School of Reinvention podcast. Again, I'm your host, Roger Osorio. If you're ready to start your journey to reinvention and want to walk the path with others, visit www.rogerosorio.com and go to the School of Reinvention to check out for yourself how a community-based coaching platform can help you begin your next reinvention. You can also go to rogerosorio.com to purchase my new book, The Journey to Reinvention, and receive some exciting bonuses. Until next time, make your day great.